for joining us for the APSI webinar series, Aging with Disabilities, Preparing for End of Life with Dignity and Support. The series is being recorded and the links will be shared following the sessions. APSI, the Area Planning and Services Committee for People Aging with Lifelong Disabilities, works to address both the opportunities and challenges that present themselves as more adults with lifelong disabilities grow into later life. Our group meets monthly and we work to identify existing services and service needs, improve communication and collaboration among service providers, provide cross-training on both aging and developmental disabilities, offer educational forums for the community, raise public awareness about aging with lifelong disabilities, and plan for emerging issues related to aging with lifelong disabilities. Our first session in this series is entitled Honoring the Journey, Person-Centered Approaches to Death and Dying, and I'm so happy to introduce our presenter, Ms. Reamey Belski. Reamey is an end-of-life doula and a positive approach to care certified independent consultant. She received her doula training through Doula Givers Institute and her dementia training with Teepa Snow. Reamey is dedicated to providing holistic and compassionate support to all of her families. She specializes in supporting individuals with dementia, caregivers experiencing fatigue, and those coping with unexpected terminal diagnoses. Her unique expertise in end-of-life care allows her to provide tailored support to those in their final days. If you have any questions throughout our presentation, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll review as many as we can after the presentation. So thank you, Reamey.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. It's always a big honor to be here to present in the community. I really do love where I have found myself, which is, yes, I'm an end-of-life doula and I do a lot of bedside support for people and, really helping them navigate the topics of end-of-life planning. But what I didn't think was going to be so much of my role, which it has become a lot of education and outreach in the community. So that is something I have grown to really love. And I love helping people in my community start these challenging conversations about end-of-life planning and helping them navigate some of these decisions and conversations. So it is always a huge honor to be invited to speak somewhere. So thank you so much for giving me some of your time this afternoon. So I'm really excited. All right, so I guess we'll just go ahead and jump into it. Let's see, I guess we can start with the first slide. Yay. Thank you. All right, so today we're talking about honoring the journey, the end of life journey, and it really is, it's a process. It is a process. And like any other journey, some of them are longer and some of them are shorter. And we never really know until the end. But what I try to do in my work is really keep a person-centered approach to death and dying. In our society, a lot of what we see is that end of life has become more of like a medical thing. And I am very much the type of person that believes it's not like a medical emergency. I don't think end of life, and I don't think dying is a medical emergency. I believe it is a human experience. It's something that we are all going to experience at some point in time. And I think it's really more of a holistic way to look at it, saying like, this is an experience. This is not a medical traumatic event that we need to try to mitigate and push off and avoid. It's like we are all going to die eventually. Why not make it a supported, holistic experience for the person and for the families? So I think that's important to just talk about. And like I come from the place where I'm like, this is not something that we are trying to avoid indefinitely. It's something that once, we are going to be passing, I want it to be an experience that we can really lean into and accept, and really truly support the people that are going through this together. So we can go to the next slide. Perfect. So like you heard a little bit in the introduction, my business is Crossover Doula Services, and we are an end-of-life support and planning company based here in Richmond, Virginia. I am from Richmond, Virginia, and so I love this city, I love this town, I love the people, and I'm really excited to be a small business in the community for the community. Primarily, we specialize in three ways of supporting folks that we work with. We do a lot of um, dementia consulting. I would say probably at this point, like 75–80% of my clients, they are living with brain change. So I do a lot of dementia consulting support for families who have loved ones living with brain change and different forms and types of dementia. It is something that's very near and dear to my heart. My grandmother passed away a couple years ago. She had dementia. And so really being able to kind of walk along that journey with her and see the changes and understand a little bit about kind of like what her brain is going through and how that's impacting her, her sense of self, the family, and then us as a family as we came around to support her through that journey. It was I learned a whole lot. I learned a whole lot about that. So that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. People living with brain change and different forms of dementia. I'm trying to learn everything I can because it's such a big unknown. And the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, I know nothing. So that's been an interesting journey for myself to kind of dive into dementia care and consulting support for families. The other thing we do a lot of is, as you would guess, end of life planning support for those who are in their final weeks of months of life. But also, what we're doing is coming alongside families who may not know what their options are, or may have a loved one who is going to be passing relatively soon, and they don't know what their options are, where to start in the process, or what steps need to be taken next. Throughout the presentation today, I am going to be sharing stories from clients I've worked with, and I'm not going to be sharing any personal information, but I am going to be telling you kind of because I'm somebody who learns with like examples. So if you're somebody who needs examples, that is why I'm going to be using real life examples today. So one of them I wanted to throw in here. A couple days ago, I think it was, yeah, it was yesterday. It was yesterday. Yesterday morning, I hopped on a call with somebody who had been referred to me. And she said, like, my loved one's going to be passing soon, and we've never talked about anything. So I don't know where to start. I don't know what hospice is. I'm thinking we only have a couple of weeks based on kind of like where he was in the disease process. And she said, I just don't know where to start. And so I kind of told her a little bit about what hospice care is and gave her a warm referral for a hospice company I know and trust. I said, why don't we start there? And so you'll be getting a little bit more medical support and management for your loved one's situation. And they can definitely help you walk through kind of like the medical end. Because I tell people, I'm like, hospice is the medical manager of the situation, and I am there to support more on the emotional and spiritual and logistical side. So it got her in touch with a good hospice company. She also said, like, we've never done a will, and I know I'm going to need, some of the estate planning things tied up, the legal side. So I gave her a resource for a good contact for an estate attorney that I know and trust. And then she said, and I don't know about like funeral arrangements. I haven't done any of that. So of course I connected her with a good funeral company. And we did all of this in about, I think I was on the phone for about 45 minutes with her. So sometimes, and she didn't necessarily need, well, she said, like, let me think about all this and I'll get back to you, like, if I want you involved. And I said, absolutely, no pressure, just think about things. So I was able to give her resources for some of the crushing questions that she had on her plate and that she just didn't know where to start with. I was able to give her those resources. And then I said, like, here's some more information about what I can do and how I can continue to support you. And I just kind of left everything with her. Then But a lot of what I'm finding that I'm doing is people will just call with like questions. And if I can answer them, I give everyone a complimentary discovery call. If I can answer all of their questions at that time, I certainly will. And I don't need them to like promise to come back or anything like that. Like, I don't mind if you don't hire me. I just want you to have resources, especially the ones I feel like everyone ought to just know that are available. And you should know what hospice is, and you should know like who you can contact if you need a will done, and if you have, specific questions about the professional services that I don't provide. So I was able to pass all of those things on to her. So that's a big thing of what we do. It's just kind of the acute questions, bigger sort of like, where do I go? What do I do? What needs to happen next? Kind of thing. And then we also do the very nitty gritty bedside support. So the vigil support when there is somebody passing. Oftentimes, when we work with clients, we are in their homes. And I say, I provide my best work in person. I want to be in your home if that's where you are. And those who are actively transitioning out of this life, people sometimes want an end of life doula, such as myself, to be there and support them, and really, truly kind of handhold them in their journey, but also their family. So I've worked with people who said, I'm really scared to die because I don't want my loved ones to be here without me. I'm worried about them. So somebody in my place can say, I'm here to support your loved ones as you pass, and they're not going to be alone when that moment comes. So a lot of what we can do is provide the emotional support for people who are scared to let go and pass because they're worried about their loved ones and what's going to happen with them at that time. So we kind of, and then what's not even listed that I already said was I do a lot of like community outreach and education, workshops at churches, community events, senior events, lunch and learns, kind of anywhere somebody wants me to come in and speak about this work. So that's kind of like the three primary ways that we provide services. And we can go on to the next slide. Perfect. Okay. So here's a little diagram that I like to show people. It kind of encompasses some of what we do as end of life doulas. And then for those who are curious, the word doula is a Greek word that just means a woman who helps. And we use that term because there are birth doulas, and a lot of people are familiar with what a birth doula does. And I say we all labor into this world, and eventually we all labor out of it. So the birth doulas are there supporting the humans who are giving birth at that time, and the end of life doulas are there for the humans who are laboring out of this world. So we're truly there during the laboring out portion, but we can go beyond that. So we can go beyond that a little bit to more of like the planning for the laboring out of this world. Another story that I have is somebody actually stopped me at an expo a few weeks ago, and she said, I am living with brain change and I do have a diagnosis of dementia. And I'm planning all of my end of life arrangements right now while I do what I can. Um, and she said, I would really like to have you kind of involved in my end of life care. And so, can you, like, are you willing to, agree to like be there and support me at end of life? And I said, of course, yes, definitely. But I thought that was really interesting. Like, she was going so far as to the point of picking an end of life doula to incorporate into her end of life planning so that everyone would be aware that an end of life doula was planned to be part of her journey out of this world. So I thought that was pretty awesome. So a lot of what we can do is not just like the hand holding at end of life. We can, like I was saying, be this huge resource, which is what I love to do, be a really big resource for very specific and logistic beneficial support systems that families often need, but might not even be aware that they need. So I have one client, and he and I have been working together since like late summer of last year. And he said, Reamey, you've just become the person I literally ask every single question that comes up to. And you either have an answer or you know how to find an answer for me, or you know what direction to put me in. So he's just been like This his loved one does have dementia. So I've been helping in that way, but also he's just like, what do you think about X, Y, and Z that has nothing to do with end of life or dementia? And I'll either be like, I actually know somebody who can like help you with this, or I have a resource for you. So he said the other day, he's like, I love this. Like you've just been the person I go to for everything, and you can like help figure out where I should be looking for the support and the answers. So that's just kind of like a very general idea of what we can do. But I did like this diagram because an end of life doula does we are made up of so many other roles that you'll find out there. And we can go to the next slide, which is very similar. I just have a definition on this one. So what is an end-of-life doula? An end-of-life doula is a non-medical professional. We are specifically trained in end-of-life care in order to provide the emotional support and the logistical guidance to the individuals and also their entire family. Something I specialize in personally is the caregiver support for the family and the loved ones who are just surrounding the person who's passing. So I can be there for the person who's passing, but I love showing up and being an emotional support source for the families. That's like something I personally specialize in. So people who come to me when they're like, I'm just so overwhelmed, and I just don't know what to do. I don't know if I'm doing the right things, and I don't know if I'm doing enough of the right things. And I can come alongside them and just kind of like help walk them through that end of life journey that they're experiencing via their loved one. So another example I'll have is give you is probably about 2 months ago. I had somebody call and they said, my mom's gonna be passing the next, week or so, according to hospice. They had a great hospice company. And she said, I just don't know what like I need. She's like, I don't know what I need throughout these next 2 weeks. And so it turned out what she needed was just somebody on the other end of the phone. So when she would go do a visit with her mom, because her mom was living in an assisted living community, she'd go do a visit with her mom and spend the day there or whatever. And she'd come back and she just wanted to be able to call somebody and tell me what was going on, what her fears were, what she was most concerned about. And either we would talk through what was going on with her, and sometimes she just needed somebody who could listen and hear and truly hold space for what she was, experiencing, and how it was impacting her to watch her mom, laboring out of this world in those last couple of weeks. So what I tell people is like, I'm really good at holding space for you because sometimes that's all we need. Like we need a listening ear. If you're the one who has a loved one who is facing end of life, you need to make sure you can find somebody who can truly hold space for you, and that you're not asking them to fix anything, but you're asking them to listen. And so that's what I can be for a lot of people. So she wanted somebody who was just able to hear what was going on, to offer suggestions and offer tips, but not necessarily try to like take over anything. It was more of like, I'm just here to support you. And it sounds like you just need to kind of vent, to tell me what's going on. And like, here, let me share, any of my thoughts. But truly, I'm just a welcoming space for people to process in that moment if there's somebody who needs to kind of talk through what's happening. There was, let's see, we'll get to this in a little bit too. So I guess we can just go on to the next slide. Um, so how can we talk about death and dying in a person-centered way? Um, so I feel like I should probably back up one step here and say that like I personally can bring experience. I can bring to this conversation things I have seen, experiences I've had in telling you experiences that my clients have had. But like I, as an individual, I have no answers. I have no answers. I don't have like hidden secret tips and advice that like makes this situation better. The thing is about death and dying, like we can't fix any of this. This is happening. we're all kind of out of control of the timeline. We don't know when it's going to happen. And I can't fix or save or solve these problems for my clients. I can simply be here to support them and understand that every single situation is unique to that situation and that person and that family. So there's no one size fits all in my approach to care. I am truly meeting everyone very individually where they are and trying to assess the situation and see how I can help to make the situation a little bit better. A lot of what I'm doing is getting involved so I can help reduce the anxiety and the stress in the situation. But I have no like magic tricks up my sleeve. I don't have answers. People ask me all the time, like, what happens when you die? I don't know. I don't know. But I think the important thing is to like just, and this is what I do with my clients, just very honestly, I am just telling them what I know if it is something I truly know. I leave out what I think and what I don't know for sure, because I don't think that's helpful. I want to know what my clients think, and I want to know what they're feeling about things. But I'll leave out all the things that I don't know for sure. But I think being really honest with my clients is is showing to be very, very successful. So I do have clients who've asked me like, am I dying? And I think it is very helpful and I know good to just be honest with that person. And I have noticed that when somebody asks that, a lot of times they already know the answer and they want to be reassured. They want to be reassured and they want to be validated because if they already know what's happening and everyone around them is saying like, no, 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 don't worry, they're going to be fine, then it's not truly what's going to benefit them. So being very honest about situations with my clients and with the family has proven to be very helpful. And it seems it can feel kind of hard to, have to literally say these words to somebody, but by the time they're asking, they already know and they just want somebody to also recognize um, the impact of what they're going through. And so I've seen a lot of comfort being brought to people, like when we're just honest with them. Something else I like to do is just a lot of education about the natural dying process and what the body's going through and how we can support that person physically and emotionally and spiritually through that. And it starts with understanding that every death is unique to each one of us. So our bodies have a unique way of shutting down. My body has a unique way of shutting down. Your body has a unique way of shutting down, and we don't know it until we're going through it. But it is really beneficial to know that not every single death is going to look the same. There's a lot of similarities, but there are no two deaths the exact same way. So I do a lot of education and learning things to look for so I can let my clients know these are things you might need to be aware of, just so that if they were to happen, I don't want you to be shocked and surprised, but I want you to know like this is a natural way that our bodies may shut down. There's lots of signs and symptoms, and I'll go through these with my clients so that they can be aware that this might be something that happens. But the entire time I'm telling them, and it could be that you don't see any of these symptoms or these signs that end of life is getting near. It could be that they just kind of pass away very, very quickly and quietly. Or you could see all of the signs and symptoms. So it just depends on the situation, and we don't know which way it's going to go until it is. But just allowing people to very openly understand that everyone's going to be unique, but there are lots of commonalities between the end of life experiences. So I'll go through those with people so that they have a good, clear understanding of things to expect, so that they're not shocked and surprised when their loved one does have certain signs and they are experiencing certain symptoms. And I said this earlier. The other thing is that death is not a medical emergency; it's a human experience. And I just like am always coming back to that fact because that helps me recenter myself when I'm working with somebody. It's easy to get caught up, if, especially if this end of life is happening in either an assisted living place or a hospital where the hubbub on the medical end is very loud. Like there is a lot of medical interventions or talk of medical interventions, and it can get very busy, and it can feel like it's hard to remember that it's not a medical emergency, that this is truly end of life is truly a human experience. And so recentering myself so that I can then help my clients recenter themselves is also very, very helpful. All right, so we can go to the next slide. And this one's pretty much blank. It says, what makes a good death? And it is blank on purpose because I cannot tell you what makes a good death for anyone. I can tell you what I've seen, and I can tell you for myself what I think would be a good death for me. But I think it is important for all of us to consider like what would be a good death for myself. And if you are caring for somebody, understanding what their values are and understanding they what they would, if you can know what they would or would not want, is wonderful. But if you can't, so sometimes like when I'm working with clients, a lot of them are in very late stages of dementia. They don't necessarily have the ability to have conversational chit chat with their loved ones. So I've worked with somebody who said, I never asked my wife whether she would prefer burial or cremation or something else. And I feel so guilty because I didn't have this conversation and I don't know what she would want. And now I can't ask her because she cognitively, like, we can't have these conversations anymore. Um, so what makes a good death is very, very personal. It is a personal question, and there's truly no one who can answer that for you. But I do encourage people, even if you're working with a loved one and you're caring for them, and maybe you don't have the ability to have a conversation like that, you do know what they value. And you will hopefully be able to understand if they are in a lot of pain and what those signs are, even if they can't verbally tell you. Are they in pain? And does this seem like something that a level of pain they would be okay with, or maybe no? And if not, well, let's ask for some help on the pain management side from the medical team. So even if you don't know exactly what your loved one would or would not want for themselves, hopefully you know them well enough as an individual and a person so that the choices that you may have to make can truly reflect their own values. Um, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to know what somebody wants at the end of life. It truly is, and I do not have any tidy answers to gift you, unfortunately. I do know that I've worked with clients who've come back and said, like, I was really glad that things worked out the way they did in X, Y, and Z fashion. And I will tell you a little bit about what those are, because I think it's really helpful, again, to hear real life scenarios. So I worked with a client last year, and it's been almost a year. I think I started working with them in May of last year. So it's been just coming up on a year. And she ended up passing. So she had vascular dementia. And she ended up passing about a month ago, maybe a little more than a month ago. And she had actually been at a party, and she had fainted and she fell and hit her head, and they ended up having to take her to the emergency room. And it was very sudden. It was very, very shocking. No one really expected it. She had been fine, like really fine for quite a while. And she was in very early stages of the dementia journey. And so like the disease process was not what was like keeping her from like going places or anything like that. So they ended up taking her to the emergency room, and the husband called me the next morning and he said that like she passed last night, and this was the situation that happened. We ended up having like I chose to take her off life support because I just knew that that was not a life that she would want for herself. She hit her head and there was a brain bleed, and they said like this is like she's not going to be waking up. And he made the really tough decision to take her off life support. But his words to me the next day were, it it was really tough, but I'm glad it worked out like this. And he kind of went into it a little bit. He was like, this is not what she wanted. I'm so happy I had the ability to make these tough decisions because truly I was able to honor her wishes, even though the situation was awful and really shocking and unexpected. And at the end of the day, I think that's what we're going for. I think a good death is when we know that the decisions and choices that are made are truly reflecting and honoring what we would have wanted for ourselves. If we are in the position that we can't advocate for ourselves. And so he said that it was a really, obviously, a really traumatic and tough time, but he said he was very happy that things went the way that they did. Um, and then also, I was going to tell you that my client who just needed to call and talk to me after her visits with her mom did end up passing about a week and a half after she and I started working together. She didn't need me bedside support with the mom. She just wanted me to be on the phone with her after her visits. And she would text me during the visits if something was coming up that she had questions about. And she ended up texting me over the weekend. She said, my mom did pass away, Sunday evening. We were all the daughters, there are four daughters, we were all able to be there. We all were able to say the things that we felt like we needed to say because that was part of the kind of conversation she and I had had. It was like, go ahead, like she can still hear you. Go ahead and say what you need to say. Go ahead and like say everything you need to say. Tell her that you love her. Giving them permission to go. That's really helpful sometimes. So giving permission to go, telling mom that, like we're all going to be okay and we're all here together. We got each other. It's okay to go. So she said she was able to do all of those things with the other siblings who were there, and that she said that mom needed to hear it's okay from every single daughter. And after she had heard it from every single daughter, she was able to let go. And so just kind of hearing that from my clients kind of like perspective on that was really beautiful. And she said that it was so tough to watch her go, but it felt like it was the best possible scenario and situation for that. And having that kind of help, I guess, like coaching that says like these are the things that we found that help people. And I also reminded her that sometimes people don't want to be in front of their loved ones when they die, and they want to kind of like go when no one's watching. So to take moments and go out of the room and leave her alone for a little while and make yourself a cup of coffee or take a shower and come back will give her time and space if she's waiting to pass when no one's there. So she said all of those things were really helpful. They were able to utilize a lot of what we talked about. And she said it was really sad, but it was also beautiful. And it just felt like it was the right time. She said everyone felt like they had been able to have opportunity to talk with her and say goodbye before she went. And I was like, if that's not a beautiful end of life, then I don't know what is truly. Um, so yeah, I have more stories about, clients that have had end of life experiences and have come back. Oh, there's this really beautiful one I do want to share with you real quick. I actually did not end up having this family as a client. I did a home visit, which was like my first kind of conversation with the family. And I went to their house and I showed up and I walked in, and after like 5 or 10 minutes, I knew that this family did not need me. They were emotionally like so, it was so beautiful. I walked in and talked to the dad, and he was like in bed. He was like, I got everything I need. Like, I have lived a great life. I am ready to go. I have everything I need right where I can reach it. Like, I have my snacks, I have my remote, I have my daughters in the kitchen. I am good. And I was like, you sound good. I don't really think like you need me. I was like, I think you guys are good. And I talked to the daughter, and the daughter's like, we have so much home help. We literally feel very supported with the organizations in the community. They had whatever good health insurance that they had, like almost too much home help with them. And they had people kind of sitting around waiting for something to do. And I was like, y'all definitely don't need me. People who need me are in like crisis mode. I was like, you guys seem like good. And they're like, yeah, I think we're good. So they didn't need me, but I wasn't there for like the end and like his passing. But if you're going to that situation, you feel so supported, you've built that network of support around you, and you are in the mindset of like, I have lived such a good life, and like this is my time, and that's okay. Um, that I think about that family quite often, actually. I'm like, I mean, they were all sad. They're like, we don't want dad to die, but like dad was like, it's okay. Like we've lived a good life. Like we are okay. So that's a story I think about too every once in a while. So anyway, let's go to the next slide. This is just a little how to find me. If you end up having questions, or you want some more information, or you want to see kind of like some resources, I will give those out all day, every day. That is how to find me and my team, email, phone number. I definitely want to hear from anyone who has questions. If you are out of state, I have a huge network of other doulas that I work with and partner with and can help you find somebody. So I've helped people find doulas in neighboring states across the US, California, um, like really wherever I can find them. And I don't just find them and like send them a phone number to call. I I will actually go and track down the doula and make sure they're still taking clients, or they're still like, you know, serving their community at this point. And I'll kind of have a conversation so I can make sure that they seem like a good fit and a good vibe, and they are who they say they are and all of that. So I kind of vet them before I then pass their information off to other people. Um, so that is something that I like to do. If somebody's like, "Hey, can you find me a doula in North Carolina?" I can be like, "Yeah, but I'm gonna like call them and make sure they're good people before I send them to you." So that's something. If you need like resources in other states, I can definitely help match you with those too. So yes, I would love to hear any questions that anyone might have. Questions, observations, thoughts.
Reamey, I do have a question. Have you worked with any community members that were actively passing that maybe didn't understand the process or that they were passing? And how did you kind of broach that?
That's such a great question. So one of my very first clients, um, his doctor actually called me and he said, like, hey, you know, we've just sent him to the hospital. He's pretty, pretty actively dying, or he will be soon. And he just doesn't think he is at all. So I went over and I did a little visit with him. So I went to the hospital. And I was chatting with him, and he was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna be fine. Like, I think I'm gonna be fine." And I'm not here to convince somebody of something that they truly don't believe, because that just doesn't seem like that would ever work. So I just said, okay, okay, like that's fine. But while we're here, like, do you want to talk about maybe having an advanced directive just so that you have a way to advocate for yourself for any medical services? And he said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So kind of the entry point to that conversation was just doing an advanced directive with him so that he could talk about, well, if I were to be dying, or if something should happen, here's what I would like done. And so like that visit, he was very much like, no, I think I'm okay. Like, I think I'm gonna be like going home soon. And I went back, I think it was the next day I went back to go see him again. And I'm not sure what changed in that time I was gone. I walked back in and he was like, I think I'm dying. And so there wasn't, I mean, at least while I was there, there was no one like trying to convince him of something. We were just saying, okay, like that's okay if you're not thinking that you're going to die. Okay, like let me see how I can support you in other ways. And then I don't know how the shift happened or when that shift happened, but he very much was like, I don't think I'm going home and I don't know what to do. And so then it became, oh gosh, now he's scared. So how do I support that? Because now he thought what was in his control was like completely outside of his control now. So then it became, how do I show up and support him and hold space for him? Because yes, it is scary. When you're not prepared, you don't think it's happening. Yes, it can be very scary. So that's how that shift changed. And then I was able to support his niece because he had like no close next of kin. So a niece who unexpectedly was being thrust into the situation, I was then able to come alongside to support her because she didn't know what to do. She had no idea what to do. So between me and then the hospice social worker, we were able to get her some support because she was suddenly like, he just called me and I don't know, and I'm at work and I got two kids with me. Like, yes, so that was kind of that situation. I would say like 9 times out of 10, once I'm kind of involved, somebody knows something. And because I work with so many folks who are living the brain change, those conversations don't come up like as much as they might. Um, but I will work with families who are not sure if, or they're definitely not um I guess like mentally accepting the fact that their loved one's passing. So like those conversations I've definitely had with family members. Does that answer your question though?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
great. Thank you. And I do have another question for you, so forgive me. Um, have you, do you have any tools or suggestions for like formal caregivers supporting individuals that maybe
Mm-hmm.
aren't actively passing, but you really want to prepare for that?
Mm-hmm. Do you say formal caregivers like people who are working in assisted livings with people?
Yeah, assisted
Okay.
living, group homes, these formal
Mhm.
paid care providers that are caring for loved ones aging with lifelong disabilities or community members aging with
Yeah.
lifelong disabilities.
You know what? A resource I found recently, it's a website and it was created by an estate attorney who went through the process of, he was the executor for his father's will when his father passed, and he ended up taking on the burden of pretty much all the sorting through of everything before, during, and after his dad's passing. And he created a really amazing website that's called Buried in Work. So if you Google Buried in Work, um, and he has a lot of his materials free to use. He talks about, honestly, like I haven't even picked through it completely because it is so much information, but it's great. So I've started giving this resource out to people who are like, they don't know where to start. They don't know what their checklist should include. He's got literally checklists, which you can then ask families if they've sorted through this checklist. And then he breaks it down into so like religion and culture too. So he'll be like, here's some things to know for our Jewish families, and here's some things to know. Like he'll kind of break down different resources in light of culture and religion, which I think is really awesome. And then he has resources as far as like legal side of things, and like how to get in touch with. I think there's even a section of like how to get in touch with like more of your local organizations, who to be reaching out to and what their roles in this end of life care are. So I found that website really helpful because it's like a lot in one place. You kind of have to sort through it a little bit. But that's a good one. And then another one that I give families all the time is autumn.co. And that one is basically another website, free resources, checklists, making loss more livable. And that kind of, I found it helpful and it reminds me, I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, like I need to ask my client if they've thought about how to transfer their deed to their car to their next of kin, or little things like that. That's not necessarily like strictly end of life, but they're like all the little things that are sitting on the outside of that situation. So that's another one I'll give out all the time. And then that's helpful for people just passing on information to the families. Um, yeah, is that like, was that helpful?
Yes, that's great. I love these two websites. I will be checking them out and sending them to some of our group homes in Henrico. I do have another one.
Yeah.
Um, have there been any unique preferences that you've asked individuals that are passing that have been really meaningful at the time of passing, right? So like someone might have a favorite song or they want to be surrounded by certain people or, or their preferences like that that you would recommend people to pursue when they know a loved
Mm,
one is passing.
um, so a lot of times when I'm involved, it's not the person themselves that I'm able to ask these questions to, but I do ask these to the families. So a lot of times I'll sit down and ask the families if they have planned their vigil and sometimes, or like, do you have a plan for the vigil, the active time of death, and immediately after? And so starting at the beginning, they're like, well, what do you mean? And so we kind of go over how to create a space. And there's a really cool book about that. It's called Death Nesting. If you're interested, it's about how to create a space for somebody who is actively transitioning. And she goes through everything from like, you want to like, basically, you can cultivate the space, the smell, the lighting, the textures. And then for like the individuals who are also a part of this situation, sound, music, is it natural air? Is it like man-made? Is it a fan or is it window open? Like what's going on? And really how to create a space like that for people who are like very intentionally wanting to plan this, or at least have some sort of like, I know my loved one hates socks on their feet even when they're cold, and they hate the window being open, but they love a good fan. It like even helping my clients be able to cultivate the space that would bring the most comfort and peace to their loved one, even if it's not the loved one who's able to like tell me all of these things. So planning a vigil, and then when they're actively dying, then I'm going through kind of like what to expect, what to hear, what they're going to see, and then how we can support these changes in their loved one. And then right afterwards, and people are normally like, well, afterwards, we're going to call the funeral home. And I kind of go over like, well, right after they pass, like I encourage people to take some time with your loved one and don't call the hospice nurse right away or don't call the funeral home right away. But take some time and be with your loved one. It's been shown to like really support the grieving process as well if you don't just rush off and pick up the phone. So I had one client, and all we did, we met one time. I walked her through like she had already created such a beautiful space for her mom, and I was there and I was giving them a few little tips and suggestions, but they had done a great job. And then I said, well, what are you doing right after she passes? And she said, oh yeah, we're planning a memorial service in a month. And I was like, no, but no, like right when she passes. And she's like, I don't know. I was like, well, why don't we talk about it? And so we kind of like talked about the options. She was like, because a lot of people get nervous, like, oh, am I gonna get in trouble for like keeping a dead body in my house? Like, no, we're talking like a few minutes or an hour, like we're not talking like days. And so helping people understand what their options are and then why I would suggest really leaning into that moment. Maybe you have something you want to say once your loved one passes, or a song you want to play, or maybe you just need to sit there and cry in peace before you call somebody. And then once you do call somebody, I can also let them know kind of what to expect, what that pickup process is going to be like, what to expect. I suggest you go make a cup of tea in the kitchen and let them pick up your loved one. They're going to be like the sweetest, nicest people they always are. But like you don't necessarily need to be standing there when they like take your loved one away. They're going to need you to sign a couple forms. Like I can kind of walk them through that part too. Um, yeah, yeah, but the whole like creating a space, it is something I bring up a lot and ask people if they thought about. Or if not, like there's some things we could suggest and offer and see if oh yeah, she would love that. Like even if she can't tell us right now, like I know she would love that, or she would absolutely not like that. Then that's good. All of this is good information. Yeah. I don't know if there's another question or not.
Don't have any more questions in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and close us out then, if that's okay. Reamey, thank you so much for this great presentation. I'm so grateful that your information's on there, so if people have questions, they can refer back to this recording. We hope that you all that were on with us today can join us for our next sessions. Our next session will be with Jennifer Moss from Blyleys presenting on grief and loss in the disability community, and that'll be May 12th from 1 to 2. If you're already signed up for the series, you'll just receive another reminder email before the presentation. If you know someone who would benefit from participating, please share our flyer. If you have any questions about APSE or you'd like to participate in any of our upcoming meetings, we do have a jot form linked in the chat, so you can fill that out. It's if you want to join, but please feel free if you have questions to fill it out and ask your questions in the jot form. But otherwise, thank you so much for being here. This was really informative. I'm excited to have this posted so we can share it far and wide, Reamey.